Yeah, so when we were 8 and 9 years old, we used to hang out downtown Cochrane with the streets that full of dust and gravel, and it was tiny little town, and everybody knew what was going on. But you know, really, us a little group of guys, we knew everything that was going on because we used to hang out at the hotel, at the corner of the hotel. There was a little patch of grass where they built the restaurant part now, but there was a nice patch about probably 30 feet by 100 feet, and it was all chained off with like 3/4 inch chain that was just hung in loops from one post to the next, and us as kids, we used to sit on those chains and swing and then wrestle on the grass and end up laying there and just soaking up the sun. And I'll never forget the first time that he came out from, I guess the guys were in the hotel and they spend a lot of time in there. And they were quite often in there shining up, I guess, bar stools and telling stories inside, and that was always mystical in itself as to what's going on inside there, you know. And you know, they had the luxury because they could go in there, but then they could come out and see what we were doing, but we couldn't see what they were doing in there. And we're all swinging on these chains, and Dewey comes out and just in his cheerful voice and his big smile, he says, "How y'all doing, boys? Y'all being good?" And all this stuff, and we're going, yeah, you bet. And he puts out his hand and we shake it, and you know, and he just had a monster of a hand, of course, to us little guys, and so he shook all our hands, and then he says, "No, you boys," and he always said that, "You boys keep being good. You know, just keep being good," and just always smiling. And then I remember he was heading down towards the corner, and then he stopped, and then he reaches into this pocket, and that was always the trait. As the years went on, we learned to watch his hands and watch when he was putting his hand in, because like his pocket was about 1.5 feet deep, and he'd be reaching in there, swishing around, and I mean, for all we know, he was going to pull a genie out or something, you know. He'd always pull out hard candy. This one time we were heading out down towards the Mitford Bridge, where we did a lot of fishing and traveling out in the fields, and this one day it took us out towards where Dewey lived, which was 1.5 miles west of town at the time, and he lived in the old Boothby house, and we headed out down there, and it didn't start off intentionally to end up at his place, but to get to the Mitford Bridge, Dewey's house was right there, and it was this old yellow Boothby house, and the corrals, there was working corrals around it, and it was kind of caving in a little bit on sides and stuff, but we just never really thought about going in there, and except for this one time. I remember the oldest guy knocking on the door, and kind of, you know, you're sitting back there kind of hoping he's not home, and then you could just kind of rustle around and see what's happening, you know. But you know, if he's home, then you know, you gotta you didn't know what to expect, and sure enough, he was home at the time, and he just all smiles and, "What are you rascals doing out here?" And you know, "Well, we're just, you know, just in the neighborhood, Dewey." You know, 1.5 miles later, and all the conversation, and so we had to come in, of course, and it was so foreign to us. I just remember everything just seemed foreign, because I'd never really been in a bachelor's place. And I remember it being not a lot of light. You know, it was kind of dark, and we go in the kitchen, and there really wasn't a place to sit. There was a table right in the middle, and then an old stove, wood stove there. And so we're just kind of standing around, and you know, somebody was probably yakking. I don't know what the conversation was about, but of course, probably in the back of our mind, we were thinking about hard candies, right? This is going to be the payoff, right? I remember him reaching up on top of the old wood stove and grabbing this tin down, this beat up tin that turned out to be a cookie tin, and he pops the lid off this cookie tin, and there was they looked like sugar cookies or whatever. I just remember being white, and they're fairly big, and they look pretty tasty. And we each grab a cookie, and I really couldn't put a date on them, but I'm not sure whether I had been born when they were baked or not. Like one of us had taken a bite of this cookie, and then you get the look, and you're kind of seeing what his looks like, and and I remember the other guy's going, yeah, go, and so you take a bite of this cookie, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. My God, it was just hard rock, and I was meant to be, I'm sure, like a sugar cookie, but it just, there wasn't much to it, and all the aroma from inside the house was kind of soaked into these cookies. So we go outside and grab our fishing poles and head off down to the Mitford Bridge there, and there was a little bit of quiet water down there where we used to do most of our fishing, and I'll never forget, once I get down there, we used these nice well-intentioned cookies for skipping stones to skip across the calm water down there, and they were perfect. They were nice and flat and round, and they just sailed. Say, boy, there was a guy that he really had it, and he was happy, and I'll never forget his hard candies and his hard cookies.